consequences for China for the misinformation
How do you know
that
there
they
are no
shared?
consequences?
We've been asked, and
How
it
do you
appears
know
that
there are no
were
consequences?
What are the consequences, Mr. President,
I
for the
wouldn't tell you.
misinformation?
China will find
I
out.
started
Why
this
would I tell
late.
you?
People are concerned
Oh,
that they
I'm gonna
stole
go
No,
on
you
right.
started
I'm
off by
done.
saying, why are there no
Misinformation.
consequences?
You've asked this a few times, so follow up on your response. Why are there no
How do
consequences
you
for
know
China?
there are no
Because
consequences?
we asked you,
You're
and
going to
you've
find
said-
out.
you've said
I
that you
wouldn't
did
tell you.
not.
You'd probably be the last person on earth I'd tell.
There will
Go
be
ahead.
consequences.
Yeah, please.
So mature.
Mr. President, actually, this is a question for Mr. Vice President. Do you agree with the President's statement and his understanding of federalism that his power is
Nice.
total, like, in the way that he described it? Is there anything you'd like to add? Or
This-
any
I wanna
context
see
you'd like
this
to add
one.
to
This is
what-
gonna be
the way he was
amazing.
discussing that?
I support the President's leadership under the National Emergency Declaration that he signed. We're standing before you today, the first time in American
But his power
history,
is not total.
when all 50 states have issued emergency declarations, and the territories. This is an unprecedented time in the life of the nation. And fortunately, as presidents reflected, and our health experts will continue to reflect, because the American people have heeded the president's coronavirus guidelines for America.
Not the
because
president's
state
guidelines,
governors
it's the nation's guidelines.
have
Again,
taken those and implemented them, even in states where there was not a significant outbreak, and implemented additional measures as we provided them with data about cases and best practices. We're making real progress as a country.
You
But
think
make
his
no
powers are a
mistake
little bit
about
more
it.
circumscribed than total?
Well, make no mistake about it. In the long history of this country, the authority of the President of the United States during national emergencies is unquestionably plenary. And you can look back through times of war and other national emergencies. And as the President said, we'll happily brief that. But in the days ahead, what the President's charged us to do
his power is not
is to
total. He
work with our
cannot
health
force a
experts.
state
We're going to
to
bring together
open
an
business.
extraordinary group of American business leaders to counsel the President. And then working with the CDC, we're going to produce new guidelines based upon the data for every state
State
and
feels that it needs to
territory
close
in
things
this
down. There's
nation.
been no federal
We're going to give them guidance
requirement to
on this,
close
as
down in the beginning. He
President's
refused to
indicated.
because he wanted to leave it to the
We'll
states, and
continue
now
to
he's saying it's
respect,
plural. I mean, it's
the
total.
leadership and partnership that we forge with every governor
How do
in
you
America.
say that
But,
you
this
have
is an
federalism and you
unprecedented
want to
time, but
give
I have
the
to
states
tell
the
you,
authority, you don't want to overstep,
when
and
you
then
look
to
at
go
the
ahead and
fact,
say that your
despite
power
the
is total?
heartbreaking loss of more than 22,000 Americans, when you look at the fact of what the health experts told us this could be, I think I only can feel a sense of gratitude to the American people. Gratitude to the extraordinary team that has counseled this
avoiding the
president,
question
steps that President Trump has taken,
Because you don't want to get fired. You want to make sure to stay on the
policies that
ticket
governors
next
have implemented all
in the
across
fall.
America. I mean, we were discussing today at the task force that when you look at the European Union as a whole, they have nearly 3 times the mortality rate that the United States of America has today. And that is a tribute to our extraordinary healthcare workers, their dedication, their tireless work. But it's also a tribute to the fact that the American people put into practice the mitigation efforts that the President counseled the nation to do on the advice of our best scientists.
His
now
counsel
more
was
than
to
a month
open
ago.
up Sunday.
And our hospitals
Yesterday.
are not overwhelmed.
He wanted to open
and are
up
not
yesterday.
overwhelmed at this hour. And I have to tell you, standing here today, I couldn't be
He's
more
complained
proud
about the fact that we've had to close
stand
this country
alongside this
down,
president
kicking
be
and screaming
part
every
of
single
this team
time.
to serve the
He
American
complains
people
about
in
it.
this
He doesn't
challenging
like that
hour.
we're
And
closed.
I just say to you, to every American looking on, as we see the numbers leveling and maybe even beginning to go down, I just encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, because of the sacrifices that Americans and American families have made through these mitigation efforts. You're saving lives and you're seeing our nation through this time.
Sir, did the states tell you, you've been talking to the governors quite a bit, did those coalitions of states on the West Coast and in the Northeast, did they tell you what they were going to be announcing before they announced it?
Governor Phil Murphy and the governor of Connecticut expressed today that they were going to be speaking and discussing on a regional basis what their recommendations would be. And we assured them
Tell us
today.
about that, though, sir?
We assured them today on our conference call with, I think, 48 governors that were with us today for the better part of an hour and a half. We told them that what the president would be producing, is directed to be produced, are additional guidelines for the states, certified by the CDC, that would inform those governors and local communities and mayors about the best way forward based on the unique circumstances that those states and those communities are facing. I think what's clear is the American people have seen the experience in Washington State, where this really all began for us, and in California.
Although
And now
there's
the
some
extraordinary
studies that are
challenges in
showing that it might have
New York
actually
City
started
area,
earlier in
including
different
New Jersey
places
and Connecticut,
from Europe.
challenges in New Orleans and Louisiana and Detroit, still Chicago, parts of Houston, but they're also seeing that in each one of those cases, that the mitigation efforts are truly working, and so we'll work with those states, and in some cases it'll make perfect sense for them to work together
Let you know ahead
on
of
a
time
regional
what they're
basis.
planning?
But but the president will be. I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
Can you tell us? Did they let you know?
No, you better say it.
Did the
I
West
didn't
Coast
hear you.
states-
I didn't hear
And
the
we would,
statement.
and
I'm
we
sorry.
would like to have their cooperation, and we are going to have their cooperation. They will cooperate perfectly. Watch.
Perfectly.
and let me
They're going to
just
cooperate
affirm what the
perfectly
president
because
said.
everything's
We heard
perfect.
again today,
Sugarcoating,
and one of the things
diabetes.
Our 9th conference call with governors is, I think every American would be proud to see the
My
partnership
power is
that this
total.
president has
It's
forged with
total. It's
governors
complete.
across the country.
I have total and complete
I mean,
power.
it's
You're
an
not a
extraordinary
dictator.
statement, and you'll see some data when Admiral
Even in a
Polak
national
brings up
emergency, you're not a dictator. You don't have
but the
total
flow of
power.
resources from around the world that we've moved into areas that have faced challenges. I mean, this president has directed
There's
us to
Supreme
ensure
Court.
that every state
There's
has
Congress.
what they need,
You don't have total
when
power.
they need it. And the spirit that I heard again from
There are things that
Republicans and
states
Democrat
do have
governors
control
today
over. You don't
is
have total
reflective of
power.
that partnership. And as we move
Mobilize
forward,
the National
to the president's
Guard,
goal of
deal with
reopening
threats.
America, we expect the same kind of partnership in the interest of the nation.
All right, go ahead. With the new face mask. Go ahead.
Sir, if you can hear me through the mask,
Barely.
Can you?
I hear you well.
The District of Columbia argues that they were shortchanged in the most recent funding bill because they were treated as a territory instead of as a state. Will that be made right in Phase 4?
Well, we're looking at that, certainly.
We're
I heard
looking at that.
complaint, but
We're looking at
Mayor
it.
seems to be
I'm going to
happy with
see.
everything we've done. I mean, she's actually, and she was on today saying very good things. Okay, Jack, go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead.
Mr. President?
Go ahead.
Thank you. A question for one of my colleagues who wasn't able to be here. China deployed an aircraft carrier into the South China Sea this weekend
Easy premise,
amid
right?
claims by Chinese state media that COVID has reduced U.S. military readiness in the region. What kind of responses are you thinking of? Will you have a response to this action?
China has their own difficulties. We have a relationship with China that we're not happy with certain things that happened over the last period of time, as you know, and I've been very explicit on that. But we know all about that, and no, China is. We've seen what they did. We've seen many other things that they've done, both pro and con, and we'll be just fine.
Abbott said something earlier where you said that you were putting together the economic task force and that you thought that the recommendations were happening earlier than expected. Did you mean to suggest that it could be before May 1st that you start recommending?
I don't want to say that, but we're going to be putting out.
I don't want to say
guidelines,
dates because last time I said a date, I was proven to be a complete
fairly
idiot and
quickly,
imbecile.
in a few days.
Now I know what I'm talking about.
I'm not going to say
No more
that,
dates.
Look, certain states are doing very well. Certain big parts of the country are doing very well. They're doing really very well. So we're going to be putting out recommendations and guidelines very soon, Steve.
Should guidelines be
Guidelines and recommendations are not something that says
I
total
want to tell
control.
you now, but right now we have a very strong indication that we know pretty much. We have some good ideas. I also do
We know
want to
pretty
get,
much have some good ideas.
I want to have. We'll have video conference or at least a conference call with a lot of very good people having to do with certain
Good
fields,
people.
whether it's energy or whether it's entertainment and restaurants, et cetera, et cetera. We have to get people back into restaurants. We have to do what we have to do, whether it's deductibility or not. We'll see, but it should be deductibility. You'll get them back so fast. I mean, they used to have deductibility. The restaurant business, it was one of the hot businesses, and then They ended it a long time ago, many years ago, but we may need that to get people back into the restaurants. Please.
Yeah, Michelle Obama today got behind mail-in voting nationwide as a possible solution to what's been going on in the States. She said it shouldn't be a partisan issue. Have your advisors told you that that could save lives? Having
Well, absentee ballot, are you talking about?
but on
Absentee
a
ballot?
massive scale because of the coronavirus.
Well, I don't know what she did. I mean, I didn't see that. When did that happen today?
Yeah, today she's that's a nonpartisan group.
I wish her a lot of luck.
On Abbott Labs, you said you had a long.
Yes, Mr. President, there's a little bit of confusion about your phone calls yesterday with President Putin. The Kremlin is saying that you discussed current issues of ensuring strategic security. That wasn't referred to in the White House readout. Can you
We
enlighten
discussed
us?
many things. We did discuss China. We discussed many different things, but it was primarily a call on the oil, as you can imagine.
Because we have to make
they
sure
were very
that
helpful in getting a stabilization.
we have to make
price,
sure that we
stabilization
artificially
of the
decrease
number of
supply
barrels.
so that we can
I
increase
think the
prices
number's
on
gonna be
American
closer to
consumers.
20, maybe 15, but closer to 20 than it is going to be to 10. And I think it was a very important call. I also spoke with the King of Saudi Arabia, and that was a very important call. And the bottom line is,
It's all
OPEC
important
Plus.
calls.
It's
Very
called
important
OPEC Plus
calls.
because there are other states, also other nations. We came to a very good agreement. Please. Go ahead.
What was the part about strategic security? Was that
I would say mostly we were talking about China. We were talking about their borders. And we were talking about our borders a little bit. Our borders with
So the
Mexico.
Chinese need to
Because
build a
as you know,
wall.
Mexico was a big part
Oh
of the
wait,
deal.
they already have
And,
one.
Mexico, really, it was very complex from the standpoint of Mexico. It was not an easy deal for Mexico and the president. We appreciated a certain amount of flexibility, but we talked about borders, we talked about China, talked about Mexico.
Security sounds more
well,
like arms
I mean,
trade.
we did talk about the arms. Yes, we did. That was a very important part of the call, actually. Yeah, good point. Please.
So on Abbott Labs, you said testing is going great. We know that these machines have been sent to some of the governors, but some of them are saying they don't have the materials to actually conduct.
Well, they
the
have to get the
tests.
material. You know, the governors have to get the material. Now, if they can't get it, they're going to see us. I'm talking about the local governors.
Such
I'm talking
passing
about
the buck.
governors
He
have to
passes
get
the buck
material.
all the
Now,
damn time.
They have machines. In fact, we're going to go and I asked Mike to go into it as soon as I leave. They have very powerful machines that they don't know they even have. I'm not talking about Abbott. I'm talking about the governors. They have machines that are used for this. You know what You know what I'm referring to? Very big, very powerful machines. Where in a certain state's case, they're only using 10% of their capacity, and they didn't know it. That happens to be Illinois. John, please.
Real quick,
Let's
these
blame
13
the
tests
governors
that
and
you
blame the
sent out, these
states.
new ones that you had
No one
with
blames me.
They say, including Governor Sununu in New Hampshire, that they don't have the cartridges to actually conduct the test. So when will they get those cartridges?
What do you think the answer to that is?
Rapidly increasing.
Rapidly increasing the numbers.
We look at
Rapidly
timeline.
increases, well, pretty quickly.
They can do 50,000 a day.
Well, you have other machines where they can really work. And a lot of the states have the big machines that can do a lot. They didn't even know they had them. They didn't even know that they had them. And Mike is going to be talking about that.
And you remember you mentioned several weeks ago that Google was putting together that website where they would handle the drive-in testing.
Google and Apple.
Have you
You mean
given up
Google
on
and Apple combination?
Have you
No.
moved past that?
A lot of
Is that-
people don't like it from the standpoint of constitutional rights. I mean, a lot of people don't like it, and some people think it's great. No, they are working on that, as I understand.
testing website. Remember you said a
Yeah, no, I know
website
that.
for
I know.
Google,
I
and,
know.
and it's only operating in I think 5 counties in California right now.
No,
Is
Google's
that-
looking at it, but Google is also working with Apple or looking at something. We have the greatest companies in the world looking at things.
Sugar
that
coating,
in a
more
year from now,
diabetes.
everything that we're looking at now is going to be obsolete. That's how good it is. We have things happening that are unbelievable. I saw a presentation today that I can't talk about yet, but it's incredible. Plus, I think they're doing, Tony, I think they're doing very well on the vaccines. They're working hard on the vaccines, and I think you'll have an answer for vaccines. I believe that there's some great things coming out with respect to that. Now, you need a testing period, but you're going to have some great things. Please.
Sir, on the contact tracing that Google and Apple are doing, so different subject on the contact.
No, this is the Google and Apple. I don't know if it's a partnership or what, but they're working on some. They're working on more than one element. They're working on a couple of different things. Google and Apple. Google is also
Google and
working
Apple.
on something, as you know, having to do with testing. I believe they're doing that in a singular fashion.
So my question is not about the drive-through testing website, not that.
Okay.
On Google and Apple's contact tracing, that they want to,
Yeah.
they've got this process now where they can put, contact tracing on your phone. If you opt in, you can be alerted if you've been in contact with someone with the coronavirus. How do you feel about that?
Well, it's an amazing thing, but a lot of people have some very big constitutional problems with it. You know that. It's an amazing
opting
thing.
into it. It's not a
And it
constitutional
would be,
problem that
actually,
you opt in, as
other
long as you
countries
knowingly
are
opt
thinking
into it.
about using something similar, but not as good.
Other countries are thinking about something
I
similar.
hear Singapore is. Now, Singapore had a little bit of a setback because they had a break, you know that, but they'll take care of it. I know the folks in Singapore, they're doing a great job, and they're going to put it back very quickly.
Did a setback. They're doing a
In
great job.
Singapore,
Did a
other
setback.
countries are looking at
Everything's
other things,
sugar
and some
coated.
countries are doing
Pour
that.
some sugar on. Pour some sugar on
Well, I don't
me.
want to get into that because we have a whole constitutional thing. We have more of a constitutional problem than a mechanical problem, but we will be making a determination on that. That's something we're going to be discussing with a lot of people over the next 4 weeks. That would be a very accurate way of doing it, but a lot of people have a problem with it. Yeah, please, go ahead.
A testing question, maybe for Dr. Fauci as well. Can you talk about where the antibody test is and how quickly
Well, it's
that
moving along. I think I can speak because I have to leave. Moving along quickly, moving along well.
Leave
It's
where?
a
For
test
good?
that's been going along for many,
I'm
many
gonna
years,
hope.
except now we have very modern, very incredible versions of it. But that's moving along. The
Modern,
antibody test,
incredible.
moving along very well. Okay, any more COVID-19? COVID-19.
One soldier on the
Steve?
Theodore Roosevelt has died. Have you determined the status of Captain Crozier, the former?
Well, that's going through the Navy, as I understand it. The Navy is going to be making decisions on all of that.
But you have total
And,
control.
they had a
But
break-in.
yet you
I
have
don't
to.
think
You're
the ship should have been stopping
you
in
can't speak
Vietnam
about
when
it
you
because
have
it's the
a
Navy.
pandemic. To
You
be
don't have
honest
total
with you.
control.
I don't think the captain should have been writing letters. He's not Ernest Hemingway, as I said before, and he shouldn't have been writing letters. And I don't think
A literary
he
joke.
gave the orders to stop in Vietnam.
I'm sure he didn't write that one.
But they stopped in Vietnam, and all of a sudden they get on, and now you have over 500 sailors and people on the ship that are affected. I don't know whose idea that was, but that wasn't such a good idea in the middle of a pandemic. Yes, please.
I have a question
John,
on.
go ahead.
Just one last on this question of constitutionality. I'm just wondering what changed your view because
Nothing changed it. No, I know exactly what you're going to say. Nothing changed it. The fact that I want to rely on states, or maybe will, or maybe have, and the fact that we've gotten, that's one thing. The fact that I don't want to use the power is another thing. Look.
from the standpoint of the Constitution,
Yes,
you
Constitution.
thought it should be up to the governors.
Constitutionally, you can look at
Exactly.
constitutionally.
That's
You could
the
look
exact
at
point I was
federalism,
gonna
you
make.
can look at it any different way. John, the fact that I don't want to exert my power is much different. We have.
You don't
it.
have the power that
Does
you're
the
claiming
federal
that you
government
have.
power? The federal government has absolute power. It has the power. As to whether or not I'll use that power, we'll see. I would rather, John, I would rather work with the states because I like going down to a local government. That's why with, I guess it's now 7 states, not 8, because South Carolina did, they went away from what we discussed the last time. So that's why I looked at the individual states. They're doing a very good job. They're really doing a very good job. I'd rather have them make the decision. Now, the fact that I'd rather have, that's fine, but I have the absolute right to do if I want to. I may not want to. We have a very good relationship. Now, we'll see what happens.
You don't
If you
understand
notice
the
few states
Constitution.
you're talking about, they're all
You don't have
Democrat
absolute total
governors.
power.
But if governors are doing a good job and they control it better, because you don't have somebody in Washington saying, set up a testing site in the parking lot of a Walmart. And we're in Washington and they're in a state that's very far away. That's really, it should be, and it should have always been, and I've always said it was. But the relationship we have now with
If
the
you have
states
total
and
power, then you
governors
have total
is very good.
responsibility, meaning
And
that
we'll be
you need to
announcing
take
over the
total
next
responsibility for
very
every
short period of time
misstep that
exactly what
you've
we're gonna be
done.
doing. Okay, a couple more. Go ahead.
On coronavirus and
Now, you
Joe
still have some
Biden,
power, so you
his
still have some
presumptive
responsibility,
Democratic
but you
nominee.
can't claim total power
Do you
but
have
zero
any plans yet on
responsibility.
when you'll start sharing, or when the White House will start sharing some of that information about the coronavirus? Your president.
Well, nobody's
did.
called about coronavirus from their standpoint. Look, they had the H1N1, which is swine flu, and that was a big failure. That was a tremendous failure. They had a lot of failures.
How many people died from
And,
H1N1?
You take a look at the history, and 17,000 people died. And you talk about late. They were
In
so
America?
late. They were late like it never even existed. That was a big problem. Caused a lot of other people a big problem too. So if Joe Biden would like a briefing, I'd certainly get him a briefing. I don't know what he'd do with it. Yeah, please.
Are Jared and Ivanka serving on the new task force? And how are you going to balance what?
No, they're not. No. Yeah, yes, go ahead, please.
I just want to clarify. So, in earlier conversation, there was a description of multiple different councils or task forces. Can you just explain exactly what the structure
Well, you
is?
have
and who is going
Mike's
to be
task
on it?
force, which is the White House task force, which really brought us up to this point brilliantly, I must say. Dealt with governors all the way through, and I was on many of those calls, and every call got better and better and better. It was hostile.
So good, so
better,
better, so sugarcoating, so sweet. All the diabetes.
Very friendly call. I think everyone's online. And again, you don't have anybody driving you crazy saying they're not getting ventilators, they're not getting all of the different things. They need more beds. They have a lot of beds right now. And we always erred. I think it's important if you know. We always erred on the sake of give them more. Even when we didn't think New York needed.
Except we didn't
the
take
beds that they were
responsibility for it. We
asking
said it was their
We
fault.
didn't think they needed the ventilators that they asked for. And we were right. Now, on
Has
ventilators,
this administration
we're
ever
ready to march. I told you
made
this.
any comments
We're
that
ready
it
to march.
took
We
any
have
responsibility for
10,000
any wrongdoing it's
ventilators.
done
We're ready
ever?
to move them anywhere in the
I don't
country
think
where we
so.
need 'em, if we need them. We're also building a lot of ventilators, and that's going to be used at some point. I believe, we're going to have stockpiles, including state stockpiles, if they want to work out some kind of an arrangement with us. But we're also going to help other countries, whether it's Italy or Spain or France is having a big problem. They all desperately need, Germany too, they need ventilators. So we're going to have a lot of ventilators. We have a lot, you heard the numbers, we have a lot coming next week. Next week we have a tremendous amount coming. Okay, final question, Steve.
I'd ask about how the task force is going to be structured. Is it one?
No, but then we have, in addition to that, we have a number of committees. We'll have a transportation committee. We're going to have a manufacturing committee. You'll see it tomorrow. We're also having a religious leaders committee. We have a great group of religious leaders.
To keep their asses at home, hopefully.
You've been seeing what's going on at the churches and all of that. And we're going to have a faith leaders committee. And so we're going to have a few committees, I'll call them committees, and then ultimately we're going to make decisions. So we're going to make decisions fairly quickly, and I think they're going to be the correct decision. I hope so, Steve.
Form the economic task force tomorrow. When do you want them to have recommendations?
Soon. And they already know what I want. And so when you say form, I don't have to give them instructions. These are very sophisticated people. These are the best.
They know what I want.
So
I want to look good for the election.
We just met, and we're going to meet in 2 weeks, and here's what I said, here's what I want. We've already told them. And they're the best names in the various businesses and professions and religions. I mean, these are the greatest names, the people that I think probably know the best. So we've called them, and we're going to be speaking to them very soon. And we want them to have, if it's questions or statements, we want them to have that for us. And we will have either response or maybe, ideally, we're going to be learning from them, and we'll be able to do that and put everything we learned from those calls into our new guidelines. So we're going to have new guidelines coming soon. I think it's going to be very
new guidelines, because even I have total control,
smooth,
but I'm just only giving guidelines. They're not rules.
Thank you all very much.
I watch Pirates of the Caribbean.
Stanley Shera is a friend of mine for a long time.
Okay, so this idiot thinks he has total power. I really want to know where, Judge Napolitano, where Sean Hannity, I probably know where Sean Hannity is going to be firmly right on his butt cheeks. Where all the other Janine Pirro, all your conservative type folks. I want to know where Jeff Crouere, Ringside Politics, local radio show. I want to call him tomorrow and ask him how he feels about the president saying that he has total power. If Barack Obama would have said that he had total power for anything, there would have been hell to pay, as opposed to Donald Trump's hell to pay. But it's ridiculous. He does not have total power, and I'm sure many of his conservatives are going to be like, oh, well, yeah, he does have total power. That's right. That's my president right there, Donald J. Trump. He's my president. He has total power over everything in the country, because that's what God wanted him to have. But hopefully there will now be a chunk of conservatives will be like, you know what? I did vote for him in 2016, but the idea that if he thinks he has total power, he is problematic, and we perhaps need to let him go. Not holding my breath on that by any stretch of the imagination. No, I'm not going to die holding my breath because in the hopes that some conservatives will see the light, but maybe, just maybe they will. Anyway, it's the end of today's, late jumping in on the press conference. Keep yourself socially distant and stay safe.